So good afternoon and welcome to the second day of the webinar on using the land degradation assessment in drylands, LADA, and the world overview of conservation approaches and technologies, WOCAT, for scaling up good land management practices in Asia. Yesterday, we learned about WOCAT and its use in the framework of the UNCCD and the land degradation neutrality. Today, we will discuss about how to apply it in projects context or countries. Thereafter, we will explore LADA, especially in terms of land degradations mapping and local assessment tools. As you might recall, yesterday we had some technical issues with the speaker from the Philippines. So today we should not have this issue, and I'm happy to give him the floor. Dr. Alberto, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Lucrecia, and I hope we will not have any problem with my gadget this afternoon. And I would like to share to you the experiences of the Philippine conservation approaches and technologies in the Philippines. Of course, my presentation will be very brief, and it will cover basically how the PhilCat originated in the Philippines, as well as the engagements of the organization from the time it was organized in 1999. So to start, I would like to say that the Philippine Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies was organized in 1999 with the Bureau of Soils and Water Management of the Philippine Department of Agriculture as chair. But it was not a very smooth start for the organization because since 1999 up to the middle of 2000, I think our operations were not very smooth. Sometimes we have some activities or engagement. And later on, it was reconstituted in April 27, 2007. So the composition of the PhilCat is 18-member organizations, including national government agencies, the academy, and non-government organizations. You will see that the PhilCat is composed of several types of stakeholders, and among the national government agencies, the prominent ones are agencies under our Department of Agriculture, as well as agencies or organizations under the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. But before the organization of the PhilCat, we already have a similar body with practically the same composition. Way back in 1992, after the Earth Summit in Brazil, the National Economic Development Authority, which is the Economic and Planning Ministry of the Philippines, organized what we call the Philippine Council for Sustainable Development. That was in 1992, and this Philippine Council for Sustainable Development was divided into several committees and subcommittees. So the subcommittee on land and water is actually has the same composition as the PhilCat. So even before the organization of the PhilCat, we already have a group practically performing the same function as the PhilCat, though it was organized only in 1999. Now, let me share to you some of the engagement or activities of the PhilCat. Of course, we are engaged in the documentation of sustainable land management technologies as well as approaches using the WOCAT questionnaire, the questionnaire for approaches as well as for technologies. And before we documented the technologies and approaches, we had several trainings for our documenters. Yesterday, I think Rima was able to share to us some of the documented technologies and approaches in the Philippines. I remember that live trellis, and all of this documented technologies and approaches were organized into a compendium, which was also shown yesterday by Rima, I think. And we continue documenting additional technologies and approaches, and most of these are already in the global database of sustainable land management practices. Aside from the documentation of SLM practices, the PhilCat is also active in influencing policies and contributing in the drafting of several national plans in relation to our environmental commitments. Through, of course, the Subcommittee on Land and Water Resources, which I mentioned a while ago, has the same composition as the PhilCat. So here are some of the notable plans that were drafted in cooperation with the PhilCat. First, we have the National Action Plan to combat desertification, land degradation, and drought, including the subsequent iterations for the National Action Plan. And in 2016, when the Sustainable Development Goals started to be implemented globally, the PhilCat also participated in the formulation of the Philippine land degradation neutrality targets. The picture of the report is on the right side of this slide. And as a part of our continuing advocacy for the protection of the environment, we have consistently included land degradation indicators in the Environment and Natural Resources chapter of the Philippine Development Plan for 3 successive administrations. And I would like to say also that there are very important SLM practices in the Philippines that has been documented. Important in the sense that we have gained the support of the lawmakers, and annually we are having annual budgets from our national government. First is the rain harvesting through small farm reservoirs and small water impounding projects. This is for the collection of rainwater and of course to manage runoff, and the collected water is used for several purposes, including irrigation and other livelihood opportunities like aquaculture and livestock production. Then we also have the soil conservation farming and sloping agricultural land technology. This is applicable in the sloping lands. And basically, this kind of practice is for controlling erosion and also to prevent flooding in low-lying areas. And for our lowland areas that are devoted to the growing of lowland rice, which is our staple food in the Philippines, we have what we call balanced fertilization strategy, which advocates the combined use of the proper kind and amount of organic and inorganic fertilizers. So we are trying to move away from the heavy dependence on chemical fertilizers in our rice production in the Philippines. Then, as a result of the PhilCat, including the organizations under the PhilCat, we have implemented partnership projects. First, of course, I'm not supposed to report on the results of the projects, but I would just like to mention some of the engagement of PhilCat in terms of project implementation. First, we have the Manila Bay Rehabilitation Project. The purpose of this is to reduce the pollution going to the Manila Bay. So we are using here sustainable land management technologies and practices to be able to control pollution loading going to the Manila Bay. Then we have the sustainable land resources management approach in managing hilly lands and vulnerable uplands. Our partner in this project are the regional field offices of our Department of Agriculture as well as the local government units. So it's basically the promotion of of contour-based farming technologies to reduce soil erosion as well as to increase the livelihood opportunities of the communities. Then we also have several global environmental facility funded projects. We have the integrated approach in management of major biodiversity corridors in the Philippines, which is a partnership of the Bureau of Soils and Water Management, which is an agency under our Department of Agriculture, and another agency which is the Biodiversity Management Bureau, which is under our Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Similar to that project is the project Sustainable Management of Natural Resources towards rehabilitation and preservation of key biodiversity area along Bataan Province to Manila Bay. I think aside from the purpose of maintaining biodiversity, this is also aimed at preventing again soil pollution going to the Manila Bay. And the last one is a new project which we will implement next year, securing long-term sustainability of multifunctional landscape in critical river basins of the Philippines, which will be implemented in the southern part of the Philippines. This last one is already part of our targets in our land degradation neutrality target setting program for the last project. And I would just like to show you some pictures, which is one of the projects I mentioned a while ago, the Sustainable Land Resources Management Approach Project. I would just like to mention to you that in implementing this project, the people in the communities were given capacity building in sustainable land management. And I think you can see the result in 2020. We introduced contour farming using small fruit trees. And through the years, you will see the improvement in the area. We were able to control soil erosion, and we have monitored the soil qualities, pointing that there is organic matter built up in the area. Aside from that, you will see that previously the area was devoted only to corn production, but because of the introduction of other crops, the source of livelihood of the community were diversified. And we are doing this in 6 areas throughout the Philippines. And I think that ends my presentation. Thank you for hearing the story of the Philippine overview for conservation approaches and technologies in the Philippines.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alberto. I'm now opening the floor for question, if there is any. And with this, I would also like to open the discussion on how can we apply WOCAT in project context or countries. And for this, I'm kindly asking Rima and Aurelie to please act as moderators. Is there any question for Dr. Alberto? Please remember that you can use the question and answer box, but you can also raise your hand and I will enable you to talk. I see, yeah, Rima, you have your hand up and you have the right to talk. And we also have a question. Did you measure the erosion rate before and after, Dr. Alberto?
What a part of the project is actually the monitoring of soil erosion. I was not able to show you the result. In fact, we were not able to consolidate the result yet. But what we did in the implementation of the project, where I have shown some pictures, is that we have some areas that were not treated with the contour-based technologies. We measured the soil erosion, and we also measured the erosion in areas where we applied those contour-based technologies. So we are measuring soil erosion in that particular project.
And what about land use change? Was this considered in the project?
If we can consider the introduction of small fruit trees as a land use change, yes, there is a land use change, because previously the area was only devoted to the production of corn, monocropping of corn, but because of the introduction of LM technologies, there were some small trees now in the area. If that can be considered as a sort of land use change.
Can I ask you a couple of questions from my side? The first one is the picture that you show us were taken at the same time of the year, right?
It was taken at different years, but I do not know if those pictures were taken in the same months for different years. Sorry
Okay,
for that, I cannot answer you correctly.
no problem. It
But
was just a
yes.
curiosity. And then I was wondering now, because we are talking about the concrete use of WOCAT also, no, in projects and countries. So my question is, you presented all these nice initiatives, projects from the Philippines. Did you get inspired somehow by WOCAT? So did you maybe have a look at the WOCAT database, what happened in other countries, and then got inspired on the activities to implement in the Philippines?
Yes, we are looking at the WOCAT and we observed that there were similar SLM technologies and approaches done in other countries that are also being done in the Philippines. I think agroforestry in its various models are very common among all Asian countries.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think there are still questions in the Q&A
Yeah,
box. I answer them.
yeah. And actually, I think that the question of Talal better aligned with the next session, the one I told you about how can we apply WOCAT in project context and countries. And I see that Rima has her hand up, so I would like to pass her the floor together to Aurelie for moderating this session. And meanwhile, yes, Dr. Alberto, if you can please continue answering questions in the question and answer box. Thank you very much for the nice presentation.
Yes, there is a question here. Was there any irrigation system for corn crops? No, there was no irrigation system in the corn crops because it was really very hard to construct or put irrigation systems in rolling areas. But there is one instance in one of our project sites that there was a drought in that area. In our project area, there was a little production, but in other areas without the contour lines, there was no yield at all. I think there is also one of the impact of the project. The introduced contour crops serve as, what do you call this, safety net against total loss of production by the farmers in case of shocks due to weather aberrations like heavy rainfall and drought.
Okay, thank you very much. Rima, please.
Yes, I would like first to thank Eduardo very much for this presentation, and also thank you for the Philippines for their very, very, very long partnership. I just wanted to add here that what is special with the Philippines is this kind of consortium that they already have that includes different organizations, and I mean from government to NGOs that came together and actually very officially made this committee or consortium. And then I don't know, Eduardo, you didn't mention, but maybe because sometimes you have technical problems, you have a platform and a sustainable land management platform, which is very nice and very elaborate and actually shows a lot of these good practices and the work on SLM in the Philippines. This national SLM platform is linked to the WOCAT platform, and also you have produced a lot of knowledge products, not only the book that you have shown, the compendium, but you have also different kinds of fact sheets for different audiences and in different local languages. So yes, thank you very much and for all the activities you're doing and towards sustainable land management.
Thank you very much, Rima, for the very encouraging comment.
But please tell me, the platform, is it at the moment working or not?
It's not working now because we are trying to, how do you call this, repair our website, because the platform for PhilCat is linked with the website of the Bureau of Soils and Water Management, and we are doing some sort of rehabilitation of our hub.
Okay, thank you very much. But it's worthwhile. Once it's working again, please have a look. And it's very interesting, this platform. Aurélie, would you like to take over for the projects, and how can WOCAT be used?
Yeah, I see that in the chat there are still 2 questions. They haven't been raised yet.
Yes. Yeah, so can I answer them before
of course,
you are really? So there is a question here: how is LM reflected on rural economy? Yes, it is in especially in project areas maintained by the different organizations under PhilCat. I think it has making some impacts on the rural economy, particularly in the improvement of the natural assets. I mean, the soil conditions is, I think, a precondition for crop productivity and increase in income among rural farmers. And sometimes it attracts other what do you call this, other efforts from other development partners. A case in point was the picture I shown you a while ago. 5 years ago, the road network was very poor, but because of the increase of the products going out of the area, the provincial government, the local government unit, allocated some funds for the improvement of the road network. So it attracts some more development efforts going to these communities where SLM were introduced. Another one, can I answer the other one? Have you worked soil carbon map of the Philippines? Yes, we have soil carbon map of the Philippines. It's actually one of the core indicators in monitoring land degradation in countries who participated in the land degradation neutrality target setting. I hope that answers the questions on the Q&A box.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alberto. Si, it answered the question. So now I would like to open a bit a time of discussion that we will be moderating, remind myself. And you've been seeing important presentation yesterday, no? On WOCAT, what is the database, how it functions, various aspects, also some example of its use. And we wanted to have this time for open discussion, and as Lucrezia mentioned it, you can either click on raise your hand or put question in the Q&A box, and it is a bit to open this discussion on how can WOCAT be integrated into your project. What do you see? Maybe you have question, maybe you wonder, is it something we have to, how can we have it at the formulation phase? Is it interesting to have it from an onset of the project since the baseline or in the course of it? And Rima, who has many years and decades of experience, can certainly give us plenty of examples and why they've been interesting or important. So colleagues, do not hesitate to raise the hand. And if there is any issue, I don't know if you can just unmute yourself. I don't know exactly on what modality we are.
Yes, we have a hand up. Let me allow, where is it? I lost it. Okay, Mr. Banudas Penkar to talk. You should be allowed to talk now. Dr. Penkar. We cannot hear you, huh? I think he has some issue. Anyone else?
Dr. Penkar, also in the meantime, if you want to type your question in the box, apologies for that, we cannot hear you. So the presentation of Rima were very, very clear.
Maybe I have just a question, but I think that the Philippines answer it as well. Well, today we have here colleagues also from Afghanistan that currently have a JEF project on forestry ongoing. I'm not involved in this project, so I cannot talk for it. But my understanding is that they would like to use the WOCAT and LADA approach in it. How should they proceed? How would it work? This is just a case from Afghanistan, but this applies to all projects and countries. And indeed, I see they are starting to ask questions in the chat.
Excellent. Rima, maybe I'll let you take on this first one, and I don't know if you see the question in the chat box. Okay, superb.
I will read, I guess Hamid Kurbani is from Afghanistan, I'm not sure. So in terms of updating and exchanging best practices in the platform that is useful and feasible for our projects in Afghanistan. However, the question is how to get membership of the WOCAT and what are prerequisites for that and what would be advantage of being member of WOCAT. So membership, there are two types of memberships for WOCAT. One is on organizational level and the other one is an individual membership. So I guess now in this case, it would be more a kind of an organizational membership. And there is a possibility to sign an MOU. So between the organization and WOCAT, and this is, as mentioned yesterday, that this is not financially binding. I mean, it is a memorandum of understanding to show the interest and to show the way or what one can envisage as possible cooperation, collaboration, partnership, in which direction it can go. Are we talking more in the field of education, capacity building? Are we talking, I guess, here more in the sense of knowledge management, using the database for assessing, collecting the good practices, and then for the upscaling of these good practices. So there one can already formulate the intention. And the other point is that I mean, we are, as WOCAT, we are service providers. So we also ask some financial, how do you say, so financial, not support, but anyway. So then the best thing usually is when one is formulating a project to put already from the very beginning, let's say, knowledge management as an activity. So that, because often what happens is that knowledge management is thought about when the project is almost finished, not from the very beginning of conceiving this project. So there should be an item on knowledge management, on the knowledge products that one wants to produce, and so on and so on. And there, then, WOCAT can be kind of included as a service provider. So, yeah, and there are different ways of interacting with WOCAT. This is only one way I've shown, but it's all very, again, as everything, it's very context specific. So, like in the Philippines, as I mentioned, they have their own consortium. They by now know WOCAT very well, and they are quite independent, and they actually do not need the services of WOCAT as such, but maybe in future, if there is anything that they want, like, for example, any topic that they want to go more in depth and they need a kind of a new tool, or if they are now more interested in spatial, because they mentioned the LDN target setting, if they are more interested now in working on the spatial distribution of SLM and land degradation, that or a ground truthing of more global data. So there we could maybe then again get into more specific discussions. So it's really very context specific, but as mentioned, our backbone is the database, which assesses, collects, and allows the sharing and exchange of good practices, and with the idea that it is a support for decision making, for upscaling of these good practices, be it sustainable land management, be it restoration, be it whatever. So I hope I was able to respond to this question. And specifically for Afghanistan, I don't remember if it's around 10 years ago, there has already been a project. And there, in the framework of this project, they have developed also an SLM platform. But unfortunately, and as often when a project finishes and there's no funding anymore, and people change, these things go asleep. And I think this is something that happened in Afghanistan. But we have to check now where we stand there, and if there's a possibility or if there is an interest to revive this platform. So yes, and there's also already a compendium on good practices in Afghanistan that was done under this project 10 years ago.
Alors, I'm being mindful of the time, and here we are more end, Lucrecia, so you let us know. But I see we have also 3 other questions in the Q&A. Rima, if you've seen them.
Yeah. The monitoring, I think I've mentioned this yesterday already, that the documentations are like at specific time. For example, you do a documentation today, more a kind of a baseline, and then you want to see the long term, if the impacts have changed after a while, then maybe after 3 years you go back and you document again, and after 10 years maybe you go back and document again. This is what is happening now in Mongolia, for example. 12 years ago they started documenting, and now I was there and we revisited some of these practices, and they will now document them again. And this is by comparing these documentations, then one can see what happened in the meantime. But built in the same questionnaire, I mean, there are questions which say in the last 2 to 3 years, in the last 10 years, there are. But to really do very close monitoring, I think you need to redocument. About the other thing, hence which is dependent on the soil car has been divested. We propose to submit to rectify the issues. Yes. Useful microbes. Yes. I mean, this would be perfect as testing again good practices, and then if you would like to share the experience and document it, we are here.
Okay, and do you have, like, for instance, are there already this type of practices in the WOCAT database that you remember? Maybe it's complicated and there is more than 2,300.
I think yesterday also I mentioned about the microbes. Microbes as such, no. but there are cases where microbes are mentioned. So then you need to go to the search function and go and search for keywords, like, for example, soil life, soil biodiversity, microbial. Look for these keywords, and then you probably will get you will get the case studies where the microbes or soil health was specifically mentioned. So yeah, but explicitly a focus on this we didn't have until now, no.
Okay. Alors, sorry, I'm at the same time texting one of our speakers just after. So, and the first question on project sustainability, capacity building, this one you already answered, Rima?
I am concerned about project sustainability. I mean, which project are you referring to? Are you referring to WOCAT as a project, or are you referring to as projects in general? And capacity building and the adoption of SLM by the end users. Yes, I mean, we offer a framework for decision making, and then it needs much more to ensure the adoption by the end users. And therefore, we, in this framework, we say, for example, how can you find, or how can you identify funding mechanisms? What do you need? What are the capacity gaps or skill gaps? Where do you have to make training and so on? But we don't do it ourselves. So we help in identifying these pathways, but we don't do it ourselves. So how it then gets to the end user, maybe I should leave this to FAO to talk more about the end users, because we as WOCAT, we see ourselves as service providers. So
yeah, maybe in over what we've just been exchanging at the moment, I think we can retake a bit. There is several lines, no, that we can see. There is the line of the project cycle, where we know that from the onset, as was Rima mentioning, it is important to think about knowledge management, because planning it from the onset helps to build all the activities that will create this background of knowledge, this very strong background under where that it can be put on a WOCAT database, but we've seen also that in some cases countries have their own database and translate it into their own. So that is also a bit of a choice whenever there is the project, no, to build it in, and to build also the knowledge on the ground, maybe in a specific area, but that can be upscale. Alors, so there is all this part within a single project, and there is this vision where it's more about how to mainstream SLM and making sure that what we do within the project can be progressively upscaled, as Rima was saying, so that it really promotes longer sustainability, And that is all the element of the framework on sustainable land management that also is interesting. I'm looking at the colleagues. I don't know, are there any other questions from you? You are currently running project. Please feel free. All the questions are extremely welcome, so that also it can give better idea on what can be the use of WOCAT. Okay. I don't see any raise hand. I'm not sure always my interface show me the raise hand, but I don't see Lucrecia saying anything. I'm a bit in her hand. So what maybe we can do is that we will deepen a bit on two elements that will be presented by colleagues, Cesar Garcia, that has to get early wake up this morning. Merci beaucoup, César. And my colleague Ferraz. And you will be also looking at, so Ferraz will be presenting the LADA QM more in depth, and César will be presenting you also all the work that has been done on geospatial data. So I want to present is César.
Hello. Good afternoon or good morning.
We
Should
can
I
hear
start
you
then?
well.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks.
Let me find the sharing button, share screen. Okay. Good. Hope you can see my presentation. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the FAO WOCAT mapping approach, a bit on the, the LADA approach was meant to cover all the different scale, from local scale to national, regional scale to global scale. So I'm going to tackle the higher scale, more the national and the global, and then Feraz will continue with the local scale. So what do we have here? So sorry, I missed the last sessions, but it's like 4 in the morning here in Argentina. So I hope I do not go back to things you previously saw. But basically, when we are talking about land degradation, we are talking about the loss of the natural capital. And that's one of the main concerns. So we lose the ecosystem services and we lose all the productivity and all the things that the natural capital is providing to us. And in the LDN framework, this is mostly where we put our work together under this kind of framework. This provides kind of a balanced approach. So we try to mitigate. We know we are going to have land degradation because that's the way of interacting with the nature, but we are trying to do the best to recover those places that were degraded or to reduce land degradation where we can. So our biggest tool that we have to combat land degradation are the sustainable land management technologies and approaches. And that's why WOCAT database is very important to help mainstreaming all of that. I guess you saw this presentation before yesterday about the WOCAT database, the reporting process to the UNCCD, the reporting mode of the sustainable land management. So I will talk about a little bit now about the reporting on the land degradation too. This is a bit the framework of LDN. I don't know if it was explained, but just quickly to go over it, there are some main components on this framework that I'm interested to show. One is this pyramid of hierarchies. So this is basically a question of land use planning. What to do where should we reverse land degradation, where should reduce, and where it should be avoided. So this is one of the key components of the LDN framework. You see everything is balancing on top of that pyramid. And then, of course, we have the intervention work that we do. And one of the most important things is to monitor. We need to see if what we are doing is making any sense, is making any progress, if all the interventions are really working or not. So monitoring is also tied to reporting. And then we have all of these things to get this balancing in LDN regarding this requirement of the SDGs and the multidisciplinary, multi-institutional approaches that we need to have in order to produce a more balanced use of our land. So this is, in a nutshell, the LDN framework. And I'm very interested also on the synergy, because we mostly talk about land degradation, we focus on the convention to combat land degradation, but land degradation is really something that is crossing all the conventions. It's crossing biodiversity and climate change. And as we see on the SDG themselves, we have an indicator that will be the target of what we are doing. We have this SDG 15.3.1, which is proportion of land that is degraded over the total land area. That's our main objective when we are talking to reporting land degradation. But it's inside SDG 15, and as you can see, it's very tied to the other one. So if we are combating land degradation on a forest land, in a mountain area, we are basically affecting all of the other indicators of SDG 15. So there is a lot of room for synergy in what we do regarding land degradation. We are also contributing to no poverty, to zero hunger, and to climate change. So it's very important to keep in mind this synergy when we are talking about land degradation. And here is where land degradation mapping is coming to the game. So we need to know where the problem is in order to know what to do. So land degradation mapping is a very important feature, and it's needed for many things, like prioritizing areas of intervention. We do not have endless money or endless resources always. So we need to find those hotspots or those places in which to work on, to make a better use of the money we have. So we need to support land use planning process, because land degradation is something that requires a lot of planning. And also we need to make a lot of things like reporting and monitoring our progress. Regarding that last part, the reporting to UNCCD, as I said before, is tied to this SDG, the 15.3.1, which is also produced from 3 sub-indicators. We are looking at land productivity, land cover, and soil organic carbon. So here we are facing with one of the first steps in this scale problem. So we have to map land degradation, to select intervention areas, and to monitor across the scale. We know that we are going to achieve LDN on the ground because we have the tool of sustainable land management. We need to work at field scale. We need to monitor our progress through land use planning and to look at all the synergies among the different sectors and actors. So this is going to happen at a field scale, and a local scale, at a landscape scale. But then we need to monitor and also report to the national, and we need to plan a national level, and we need to have all of that process going on. And that is normally tied to a national to global scale, which use a lot of satellite-derived data. So these processes are kind of going in a different direction. And what we always try to do since the LADA project is try to put all of this in the same line, try to align the national and try to align the local scales. So we know that mapping land degradation is not an easy feature. Mapping land degradation is a complicated process because it changes over time and space. It has to do also with knowing the causes, the process, and it needs to make sense at different scales. And also land degradation, it has a huge component that is a human perception. So if I show you this picture, we can discuss for a long while where is the land degradation happening, if we are seeing some ravines or some soil loss here, or some vegetation cover loss, and we can see things in the field. In the field also, sometimes we do not agree with different process of land degradations of erosion. But then imagine you have to do a map and you need to work with satellites. And then your reality becomes even more complex because you have pixels, you have different resolution. So now it's even more difficult to know what is going on and what is happening and to agree on that. And that makes land degradation one of the difficult things. There is this World Atlas of Land Degradation that says that land degradation cannot be globally mapped by a single indicator or through an arithmetic or modeled combination of variables. So that was a huge statement made in this World Atlas of Desertification. Yet, we need to have a map. We need to build a report. We need to submit to UNCCD or we need it for internal management in our countries to plan. So what do? We have this good practice guidance. This good practice guidance is related to this SDG 15.3.1, which is proportion of land that is degraded in the total area. So what is very difficult to capture all this process with one indicator, the idea is to have trends in land cover combined with trends in land productivities and combined with trends in carbon stocks. So this idea of combining 3 different indicators into one to have a more integrated perspective of what is going on. So when we are doing the UNCCD report that finished, was submitted by most of the countries February this year. So I guess maybe some of the colleagues that are present have been involved into that. There is one strategic objective that has to deal with all of these maps that we produce for land degradation, where you have to report all of these variables and all of these results. And this is already preloaded with tier 1 data. So there are some global models that are put into here and some calculations. So we already have maps for the whole globe. The thing is, after you do all this process of combining these 3 sub-indicators, what is the impact on the final SDG of using these global models? Well, there is not a single, for example, land productivity dynamic model. There are different global land productivity models, and using different ones, like you can see here, the shared C1, the Trends Earth, FAO WOCAT model, FAO simplified, will give you a very different estimate of land degradation. You will go for something like 7% of the country of the world is degraded on the baseline period, to 30% of the world is degraded on the baseline period. So 7 and 30% are hugely different numbers, and you can see all of the models have quite a lot of difference, not only in the total number of area that is degraded, but also in the spatial distribution. So we built this application. Here is a link. We are going to share this presentation with all of you, so you don't need to take print screens or anything. You can take the PowerPoint and click on the links and have a look. You can click on your own country here and see the different estimates for the different countries and explore a little bit more the data. So what is going on here with this estimation and this map of land degradation? Well, basically, there are different models. And that's something very important to consider. How can we improve our estimates of land degradation? So we can choose to have different data. National data is always better than global data. We can explore different algorithmics. Data is very malleable. So the maps that we saw, many of them are made with exactly the same data, but the decision on how to analyze it was different. So this is a human decision, it's a statistical decision, and there are many statistical ways of analyzing data that will get you to different places. And there are, among of these things, something that was discussed in the COP in the Azerbaijan was to integrate expert knowledge. So participatory process involving estimation of this type of data, or at least doing some quality control of the global model. what happens when you put this participatory and this expert knowledge into play? So here are some examples of the default values that were already preloaded with global models, and what are the difference that you can get if you invest a little bit of time improving these indicators. So we can see for some countries, like the baseline was 9% of the country was degraded and 10% baseline and reporting. And after doing using some national maps and doing some process with the countries, some workshops, improving the methodology, we arrived to these very different values of what was degraded in the baseline and the reporting period. So huge difference. This was also the case for Colombia, or the case in Ecuador, Bosnia and Herzegovina. Sometimes the difference were not so big, but there were also difference in the spatial distribution of land degradation, where it was located. So there are in all the countries that we will be working with, after you apply some expert knowledge or use some national data and you do some participatory processes, you arrive to a different number than just using a global model without looking. So how is this happen? Well, this has to do with these different models and the different approaches. So there is a good practice guidance that will explain you, for example, how to do a land productivity map. There is a default model for that. So this is a different model produced by the GRC. It's not the one that is described in the good practice guidance. There is this Trend Air software also that is provided by the UNCCD, which is a free to use plugin in QGIS. So you can use that also to calculate these land productivity maps, which are the main cause of this huge variation when you do a national or a global land degradation map. But also then there are some FAO WOCAT models that were developed just to add more chaos into the mix with different perspective to deal with some things that the other model were not dealing. So after that, you have a lot of different maps of land productivity dynamics that you can use. You can tailor your own models, but if you have no time, like was in the reporting period, or you want to use one of the global models, at least the thing you can do is to have a look with expert knowledge. So this is something we did in many countries. We have a Google Earth application. Here are some links where you can see some of them. I don't know if this will open directly or I need to close. Well, here. So you can see some of these applications where you can check at the country level, or you can also select different districts, and you can look at the different models of land degradation neutrality, which are land productivity dynamics, sorry, which indicate if there is a declining, an improvement, an early sign of decline. And you can see how different the models can be. An expert can have a look on the areas they know. They can explore the data. They can explore the statistics for different models. So after exploring this with a group of experts from different units in the administration or different organizations, you can have a better idea and you can respond on which is the best model for the country, what does the red area mean, what are the land degradation processes that are going over there, the improvement. So this is a very easy thing to do, just comparing different models, and that improves already the result of your final maps. So these are some of the findings that we had when we were doing that. We in some of these countries we found that it's very important to include some climate corrections into the models we have from FAO and WOCAT, like there is in Trend Earth. We also found that the default model was the worst performing one in most of the countries. followed by the FAO simplified method, which was also based on the same modeling structure. So there is definitely something going a bit oddly there. FAO WOCAT was performing better in more arid areas, but also in some countries like Colombia, or that were not arid at all. I mean, mostly very tropical country. It was performing better than the other models. So this model is more than a model, it's a collection of modules, so you can assemble your own model at the end. And the one we were using to compare was one that we tailored to Central Asia condition, but still was working well in Colombia. That is because of, we don't know, we do not know which is the best model in the different places. You can try to adjust a model to one country, but it will not work in another. That's something that was said also in the World Atlas of Land Degradation. So here I'm going to show you, I show you a bit of the remote sensing part of the picture, and then I'm going to show you one of the other things. So this is the questionnaire, this is the QM. This is another way of using expert knowledge to map land degradation. So there are some manuals, there are some links in the presentation. You can go and you can get the guidelines. Basically, what we do with the QM is a questionnaire over a map. That's why the QM. So we are trying to make some questions for the expert, for the local experts, using a map as a base to make those questions. So this is a tool that has been promoted by WOCAT and FAO and has been applied in many countries at a different scale, from local to national scale. So I'm going to show you how this is in a nutshell, because we do not have much time. But the ultimate goal is to have a picture of the distribution and characteristic of land degradation and sustainable land management activities at the scale that you are applying. So it's basically a participatory expert assessment that you do using some maps. Sometimes we use some tools like this, some kind of application, web applications. Sometimes we use simple and Excel sheets, and we use some maps that we print or some maps we put in the computer. There are different approaches on how to do it, but the basic thing is that you want to get some information, some results about where is your land degradation distributed, what is the most important land degradation types, so the most important erosion types that you have, what are the conservation measures that you are applying on the field all around, what are the causes of land degradation and the impact of the ecosystem services. So I'm going to run quickly step by step on how will be the whole process. So step one will be the preparation of the base map. We need to have a land use system map. Some countries do have it, most of the countries do not have it. You can derive one from a land cover, like we did, for example, in this example in Argentina. We took a land cover we converted into a land use system map, and then we use expert knowledge to validate this map. So we send this map to over 50 scientists around the country, and we ask to each of them look at their own region and tell us which were the places that were correctly mapped or wrongly mapped, and they give us the correction. So we didn't have the opportunity to go and check it on the field. It's a huge country. So we went to expert knowledge again to do the base map. There are different ways. The thing is, after you have this base map, then you can start to completing the questionnaire. How do we do that? Well, we have a map, we can make polygons of our land use systems. So for example, here is an example on a savanna. And then that land use system perhaps is in all your country, but we are going to cut this unit by administrative boundaries. So we will have these grasslands in this province, these grasslands in this other province, and we are going to start getting in a group with experts and discussing about the specific map units, about which is the trend of this area, which is the intensity of this trend, if there are some remarks that we need to know. So after that, we are going to move to step 3, which is the land degradation assessment itself. As you can see, this is a complete questionnaire. Sometimes there is a simple one, so you choose some of the questions that you do in order not to make it too long. But in the complete questionnaire, you will gather information about the different type of land degradations that you have in this specific unit. What is the extent of that land degradation? What is the degree? What is the rate? What are the direct causes? What are the indirect causes? What is the impact on the ecosystem services? So as you can see, there is a lot more information that the expert and the local knowledge has on the specific places. And they can provide a lot of input and insights because you have, like I showed before, a map of land degradation, red or green. Yeah, it's good, but you don't know what is going on. You need to know what are the problems, what is causing those problems. So with this method, you can gather more information about this context and these things that are going on. So basically understanding not only if there is land degradation, but what are the erosion types. There are a lot of, all of the questionnaire has already this defined erosion types. So you basically have a guide, you explain the expert how to do it, and then they just can write this code. And we know we are saying the same thing. So we do not let loose that you write any name, but it's all already tailored. So as I said before, there is a lot of information you can gather. For example, this is the degree of land degradation. There is also a definition if you're choosing light, moderate, strong, extreme. What does it mean to have strong land degradation? So it's pretty well defined. So if the expert, after a discussion, they agree that they are going to put the strong to this specific polygon, then after that, we can derive and make a map. For example, this map of the degree of land degradation of Thailand. So direct causes of land degradation, same thing. We can make a map of what are the direct causes of land degradation, like we see here in Ecuador or Panama. Indirect causes, impact of ecosystem services. So there is a lot of information is gathered with this QM. There is also in step 4 information about conservation. So here we also trying to define what are the conservation measures that are already applied there, how effective they are, what are they targeting regarding ecosystem services, what is the trend of effectiveness, if it is continue being effective over time or the effectiveness is decreasing. And there is again a list of options that the expert can choose, and they can, after that, you can use it to make a map. So there is a lot of information. Everything is kind of prepared. So there are definitions for everything you have to choose. So this is the part where you choose recommendations. So expert can recommend if what we need to do there is adaptation, prevention, or mitigation. And then you can also map that out after you finish. This is available in 5 different languages. There is a link also here to the WOCAT library. So these are the manuals for applying the QM, which explain step by step. They have the form, they have all the definitions that you will need, and I will not be able to explain in 10 minutes. But also be aware that results depend on the adaptation. So for example, in Argentina, this is so that we make this tool to also send to experts to do it over the web. And we make a very reduced questionnaire. So you can change a bit the questionnaire in order thinking of the maps that you want to have. This is yet another example on how it will look like if you do the full assessment. You will basically end up with these tables that you can later map. This is an example of Ecuador that I chose, has something to show. Basically all the steps, older sustainable land use system maps. So at the end in Ecuador, they have 647 polygons. They go together in workshops in different parts of the country, and they complete the questionnaire for all of that. And after that, they got a lot of different maps, like degree of land degradation, impacts on ecosystem services, and all of the different maps you can pull out of the QM. So a different approach to remote sensing. Now, which is the best approach? Remote sensing or expert knowledge? I don't know. We should toss a coin into the air and see what we get. Or we can agree that perhaps the best thing to do is to combine them, to find a way of doing what we call convergence of evidence, to make use of these Earth observation data sets, the global model, all of this information, and combine it with the local and the expert knowledge. Find a way to use the global models if we do not have a national data set, or if we do not have a national land cover, put a global land cover, and try to use the expert knowledge to adjust the global land cover. There are different ways you can reclassify a global map of land cover, and will give you a better national map. So if you just use the global data as it is, perhaps it's not too good, but you can adapt it a little bit using the knowledge of the expert that you have a national level to make a better thing. So this is what we call convergence of evidence. It's basically accumulated evidence at a certain point. So if we have different maps, different indicators indicating that there is a problem coexisting in a given location, then we are more sure that there is a hotspot. We are sure there is a place that we need to look in more detail. There are different ways of applying this, basically through the co-development and integration of different tools and data sets, using expert knowledge, field verification, involving participatory process with different stakeholders, making sure that the best knowledge and the best science are getting combined. And we normally use for that these decision support systems, or this user-friendly application to take advantage of the cloud computing in order to mix and compare the different indicators. Going back to the Ecuador example, so we have here on the left side the map that you get with percentage of land degradation according to the QM, according to the experts' assessment. And then on the right side, we get the land productivity dynamic, a map that was done with remote sensing. So remote sensing is really good. I'm working, that's my main job. And you can derive a lot of good things from satellite, but also wrong things from satellite. The satellites do not really understand what is going on in the ground. And sometimes you get good models, sometimes you get bad models. So these comparisons and these combinations are very interesting. There is a publication here. Also, there is a link in the case of Ecuador where you can dig a little bit more. And these are the systems that we are normally using. We are normally using these decision support systems. I'm going to show you in a little bit one, so you have a quick overview of the main functionalities. But the idea of this is to integrate different data sets into a user-friendly and dynamic system. Why we use Google Earth Engine apps? Well, basically because they are free to use. If you are doing non-commercial application, there is a lot of powerful analysis that you can do. You can build the maps and then put them into this application. It doesn't require to have a server or maintain infrastructure. It's all done in the cloud, and it's all also open source, and there is a free code. There is that publication that I mentioned. Here is also the link. We publish the code of the applications that we did, so you can basically see it's all open and free. There are some 65 applications that were co-developed between WOCAT and FAO for different project, countries, program, region, and even global level. There is this one as an example for Europe and Central Asia region, analysis of LDN, where we have this application here. Here is the link if you want to check it out, and the link to the publication. Depending on the aim, there are some differences, but if you want to know how does this decision support system look like, well, there are these links also you can explore to see what they can do. Basically, they can do visualization and comparison of map, support participatory mapping, give you different chart and statistic, land cover analysis, and allow you to do multi-criteria analysis. So if you come, for example, to WOCAT net or to some of the FAO or WOCAT repositories, you will find some of these applications for convergence of evidence. Here there are some of the land decision supporting systems. So you can see some of them. There are some examples for Ecuador, like I say, Bhutan, Kazakhstan, Panama, and some other applications like comparing LPD maps. So let me just, I don't know if I still have something like 10 minutes, perhaps, or I'm going over time. Okay, if nobody complains, I will keep going. So let me open one of these applications to show you how do they look like. Let me try one of these that has the QM. So we saw the Ecuador one. Normally you can put them into Spanish. Let me put this one into English. So we can see one and one. Okay, so here, for example, we can see this application of Ecuador. This was co-developed with the government, with hand in hand of FAO, WOCAT for a GEF project. So we have some layers coming from different places. We have some layers coming from the line productivity dynamic that I was showing you before. We have some national land covers. We have some WOCAT QM results, so the degree of land degradation with expert knowledge, the impact on ecosystem service from expert knowledge. So we have also some hand-in-hand layers tied to like a rural poverty or technical efficiencies, different sort of layers. Let me see if this works in English. Yes. So let me put it in English. Different sort of layers, and for every or most of the layers that we have here, like for example, we are looking now at the topography, but I can turn on the land cover map, and I will see here different statistics about the land cover. So here is how much cropland, how much forest. This can be expanded. You can download the data if you like in a table or the chart. And let me go back to the place. Okay. So for many of these maps, you have like the land productivity dynamic map. You have the statistics of NDVI on deforestation. Depending on the application, you will have different layers. This is another from Panama. It has a different set of layers, and they have their own land cover, so the categories are different. So all of this can be tied, and you see there are many more charts in these applications. So we can modify it and add and remove things depending on the work we do with the different country offices and the different needs, because at the end, this is supposed to be a decision support system. So you want to see easily, you only need this link, you don't need any type of login, and you can see all of this information, all of these maps, and for all the country, and you can see the chart, but you can also select, for example, a single province, and the system will take you to that province and will update all of the information and statistics for that specific province. So you can also make some masks here and make a nice maps. If you are looking for a report, you have a lot of different layers. You have the national land cover, all of the different layers that were derived, maybe from different projects. For every layer, you also have information on where the layer come from, where are these layers coming from here, some explanation, citation, and links to the original data set if they need to be done. Then you have the multi-criteria analysis. This is one of the main things for us. So we can see, for example, for every land cover type, we can see the land productivity map, land productivity dynamic map. So we can see, for example, how are the grassland doing. So we see, okay, grasslands, we have a percentage of some grasslands that are having declining land productivity, and some others that are doing good. So this is important for balancing when we're thinking about LDN. But I can also put here, for example, grassland and croplands, and say, okay, I want to see those grassland and croplands that are having declining or early sign of decline land productivity. And I can go and say, okay, please calculate this. And the system will combine these maps and show me where in the space and how many hectares I have in this province of this specific combination. Perhaps I'm also interested in, I don't know, some altitudinal space or some slope percentage, or I want to see also my key biodiversity areas. So when is this happening inside of a key biodiversity area that is not protected? Okay, let's calculate again. And the map will be updated to find these grassland and croplands that have this decline in productivity. So there are only few, you can find them here, that are happening inside a key biodiversity area that is not protected. So this helps you find places, this helps you, if you also can draw polygons here, you can say, okay, I'm interested in doing some sustainable land management type here. I will add a polygon. I can, for example, make a polygon around this area that is my area of interest. Good. And then I can download this as a KML to share with some colleagues to say, look, we should focus in these areas. My colleague will be able to open this KLM in any GIS or in Google Earth. I can also get a statistic for this specific spot. So if I come to this spot and I calculate statistics, then all of the statistics that I had regarding this combination that I was doing in my multi-criteria, or regarding all of the maps. So all of the specific maps that I had before, if I go back to my land cover, they will give me a statistic specific on this land cover area here that I just draw. So let me put this like this. So how is the land productivity dynamic, the trends of NDVIs, the deforestation in this area? So there is a lot of information here to pull out of these very simple web applications. These are really, really powerful apps. I can also go back and select Panama, and this will go back and give me information for the whole country or province or district. I can choose all of that over here and use this map to make a lot of different analysis. So if I come back to my multi-criteria, I will find that I have 13,000 hectares at the national level with this specific condition that I was putting here. So if I'm interested in forests and mangroves, I can also change that, press calculate, and it will update the statistic very easily. So there is another more tool here, is a land cover transition tool. I will go very quickly. It basically allows you to put different land cover maps, and you can compare the different land covers, so from different times, and you can have statistics about what did change from, for example, 2000 to 2021. What were the changes in the different land cover? What are the net changes and a matrix of change? So how many hectares of native forests were converted into grasslands, how many hectares of grasslands were converted into forests, and also you have some degradation maps due of land cover transition. So when you change the land cover, if that land degradation, if that land cover change is considered a land degradation, for example, from a native forest to a grassland is considered land degradation, then you will also see it as a land degradation, where is in the map and where it's located. So basically, there is a lot of things. Yeah, I will
If you can
finish
please
right
wrap it
here.
up. Thanks. Oh,
Thank
it was
you.
fast.
It's
Okay.
wrapped up.
Sorry.
I'm
Thank you
sorry it
so
took a lot
much.
of time. Yes.
No, it was perfect. I'm sorry because we started this session a bit late. I would just allocate 5 minutes of our time to questions and answer before passing to the presentation of Feras, and then we can continue with some question and answer until the closure of the webinar. There are some hands up, but again, I invite everybody also to raise their questions through the question and answer control. Let me start by Dr. Penkar. Let's see if this time his microphone works. Dr. Penkar?
Yeah, madam. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, I just expressed my expectation to my proposal to Ms. Rima. So, yesterday also, I tried to mention this approach regarding the soil degradation in India. So, what I was just pointing out, if you see the level of soil degradation, particularly regarding the soil carbon, it has been depleted to 0.2 to 0.4%. We can say this soil carbon content is throughout the intensive cultivated land of Indian soils as such. So it's a very serious issue, what I feel as such. The second point is the relative biodiversity has been degraded in proportion with the soil carbon which has been depleted already throughout the country. And the level of soil biodiversity which has been degraded to its extreme levels as such. Because if we just test the microbial content of the soil as such, the useful microbes contains is towards its lowest. And you will find no earthworms in the soil, and that is a sign of dead soil as such. And accordingly, as a third point, what I want to mention is the relative economic burden or the cost of the cultivation of the farming as such in relation with the degraded proportion of the land. The economic burden is just increasing on the farmers. You might have heard the farmers' suicide in Indian agriculture also. So these are the 3 points, 3 major issues which are just can be considered. What as per my view as such, are the serious issues. So our proposal is based on the data available. These all whatever I have told, this all data is available to the government as well as the Indian universities also, and in which we can see that the level of degradation of soil carbon as well as the this soil biodiversity as such. So our proposal is what approach, you can say as an approach proposal can be submitted by us right now also. So what we propose is the microbes, which are useful microbes, and the agro waste combination of these. If we have this approach with the composting of agro waste with the useful microbes, composting microbes as such, so there will be improvement and rectification of this depleted soil carbon in Indian soils as such. So here we can mention that due to excessive use of chemical fertilizers, one of the major factors you may say, other reasons are also there, but one of the this main reason we can say that due to excessive use of chemicals, microbes also have been degraded to its very extreme situations itself. So right now, this practice of composting with the microbial composting is being practiced by Kapur's lab in the area of Marathwada of Maharashtra in India. India country, it's Maharashtra is a state. So practically, we are doing the composting with the help of microbes to increase the soil carbon content of the degraded land. Along with that, in situ composting also is also practicing by us to increase the carbon content. So our approach, what we intend to, whether this WOCAT can generate a knowledge product recommending the Indian status to the scientific community or government or universities, all that. So that this can be rectified as such. This is all that what I do say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Penkar. I don't know if Rima wants to react to it. I have the feeling that he is maybe asking for adding one approach to the WOCAT database, no? What he described.
Yeah, again, for sure, the importance of soil health and the microbes and so on. We are all aware of that, and this is an Indian experience which we would like to share, so you can add it to the WOCAT database for sharing. And if you want like help in monitoring the soil carbon, or you need tools or whatever. So as mentioned, we are service providers. We have tools, we have methods, we can help in this, we can help in sharing knowledge, we can help in monitoring and assessing and so on. But the experience itself, it's your Indian experience, and you have to provide the data, and you have to provide the information, and you have to do the, how do you say, to assess, to do the assessing itself in entering into the database, or maybe getting in touch with CESAR in case you need a monitoring system over time, and so on and so on. For example, mapping soil carbon to see how the soil carbon is improving over time. So we are service providers. So, and please, if you have any ideas in that way, you can get in touch with us bilaterally and we can discuss this further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rima. Let me now pass the floor to Dr. Uday Sharma. This is the last question we are taking before passing the floor to Feras. Dr. Sharma, I allowing you to talk. Please go ahead. We cannot hear you. If there are other questions to the presentation of CESAR, that was very nice and interactive. I very much like the demonstration part, especially. Please feel free to ask them in the questions and answer. Dr. Sharma, can you talk? If not, I have a question for you, Cesar. In this work, did you also give an economic value to the impact of land degradation on ecosystem services?
No, depending on which, you can add that to the QM assessment when you're doing that, like a question to the expert, and in order to be discussed, and you have at least a feedback from the expert and an estimation over an area or certain region. But in the decision support system, we normally work with layers that are produced from this QM or some other places. Hand in hand is producing sometimes some layers regarding the economic or socioeconomic layers. In some of the decision support system, we had put some socioeconomic layers when they are available, but in general, there is a huge difficulty into finding this type of information, like anything related to socioeconomic, land tenure, is a huge component on the land degradation, and it's a huge gap. So difficult to put that.
Got it. Thank you so much. Aurélie, please.
Yeah, sorry. It's just somewhere where it's very interesting what was showing César, no, with the convergence of evidence and the use of the LADA QM, because actually there in the direct drivers or indirect drivers, potentially is a place where can emerge or can be put those elements, no, I think, César.
Sorry, I lost a bit the audio.
Yeah, sorry, I have an issue of audio these days. Just to
Problem.
say that use the QM when comes to put the element on direct drivers and is where some of the socioeconomic or tenure elements can be actually inserted, and so therefore then into the maps, no, that are maybe not being mapped, but being data that you have behind that
Yes.
can help the understanding, and that can be further discussed with the partners. It's a bit complicated. It is sometimes possible to really map socioeconomic, always disaggregated to a point that it can be inserted in a map.
Yes, no, you're right. Sometimes there are some statistics of socioeconomical data that governments are gathering at like a district level. So if you have that, you can make a district level map. But otherwise, the QM is at least a good tool to, like you are asking in the QM, for example, the direct causes of erosion. Which are the direct causes or the indirect causes? So these are normally regarding to land use or socioeconomical issues, and the only way to have them into a map is to doing something like this, to tie a questionnaire to a map. Then you can ask expert and you can have an estimate and you can deploy it. Otherwise, there is no collection especially of this information.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I'm now passing the floor to Feras, last but not least. Over to you, Feras. You will be talking to us about LADA local assessments of land degradation.
Thank you, Lucrezia, and thanks to the organizers of this workshop. It's very nice to talk to you, especially after Cesar's presentation. And after the last question by Lucrezia, how do we consider the socioeconomic dimension of land degradation and sustainable land management? And that will encourage me to talk on these topics. So the presentation, I hope you can see it. Not yet.
We see your email.
Yes, sorry for that.
Just for your information.
I will be quick to change.
Okay, we see your presentation. but not in presentation mode.
Okay.
Now, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the important thing here is how do we link the LADA assessment of land degradation and integrated land use planning at local level? So how do we bring the information that Cesar introduced, the monitoring of land degradation and sustainable land management? How do we put the people who are living on those areas at the center of our process of land degradation assessment as well as land use planning? They are very much related, and we would like to see how we can link them together. So just to set the scene, if we look at the land resource planning, starting from the assessment side, which is covered very comprehensively by Cesar at a global, national, and subnational level, the assessment of land degradation, conservation, and restoration. And this will help in the prioritization of areas for implementation, as well as the prioritization of practices to be implemented in any area where we want to reduce or reverse land degradation. For this, LADA WOCAT tools are very instrumental, and I will go through these tools in details shortly. This will lead to the planning, the part where we put together the biophysical and the human dimension in a participatory land use planning process where we use land evaluation. And then we go to the landscape management, the implementation and scaling out of sustainable land management practices to achieve the LDN, the land degradation and neutrality targets at national, subnational level and local level. And then the monitoring, which give us an idea where we are, what progress we made. And this was also covered by Cesar when we look at now and after 10 years, what happened to the soil organic carbon, what happened to productivity, etc. Notice that the basic unit in the whole process is the land use landscape units. This is a people-centered negotiation process, including the enabling environment, including governance, gender and tenure, and also the partnership. So participatory land resource planning is to promote the scaling out. This is an example from Morocco, but I will talk just for now for Morocco, but then the rest of the presentation will be mostly in general, what is the local assessment of land degradation using LADA WOCAT. We have the diagnosis of land use system, leading to territorial planning and leading then to implementation and scaling out. We try to simplify the process, how the assessment of land degradation is feeding in the planning process and then the implementation and monitoring. Looking at this overall diagram or tool that was developed by FAO and WOCAT, here we look at the assessment at national and subnational level, and then the selection of priority landscape at the country level. Where are the hotspots that need to be looked at? At local level, which I will spend more time talking about, the assessment of land degradation and sustainable land management at local level, at landscape level. And this will lead to planning, territorial planning, and then to implementation and scaling up. So let us go into details. At the national level, we use LADA WOCAT mapping tool, which was introduced to identify two basic things, the hotspots, the degradation areas, and the bright spots, which is the sustainable land management areas. So far, we are relying on mapping of these based on some indicators, but the socioeconomic is still not strongly included at this level. So in later stages at local level, we will include the socioeconomic dimension. At national level, there are some socioeconomic dimension, but as Cesar said, it's difficult to include information, detailed information about the socioeconomic dimension at that level. So at local level, we will be able to include more about the livelihood, the social dimensions, the economic dimension, etc. And this will be explained. At the selection of the priority landscape is very important to identify the areas at national level where local level assessment need to be implemented, and what are the process of doing that through different data analysis like similarity maps, using the QM of LADA, WOCAT, and then looking at decision support to target the selected priority landscape for SLM implementation. At the landscape where we will have more assessment of land degradation and sustainable land management based on the land use system, here we start to look at the communities, because the implementation will be done by the community and for the community. And therefore, at this level, at the local level, there is more assessment that include the people, the livelihood, the economic dimension, the social dimension, where this become more related to how people would like to assess their future implementation of sustainable land management, given or taken into consideration the assessment of land degradation process that is happening at their localities. And that will lead to, because we don't want to assess land degradation just for the assessment of land degradation, it should lead to a decision support tool. And that's why following the assessment at the local level, the planning is started. In this case, we call it territorial planning, because we are looking at localities and communities. How do we link the biophysical factors, the land degradation due to human activities as well as nature processes, how that would lead to negotiate and come up with agreeable plan of implementing sustainable land use plan or sustainable land management practices. The old or the previous approach relying on top-down approach was not successful, and therefore without community participation, without the involvement of the community, both on the assessment of land degradation and the selection and implementation of sustainable land management option, this will not lead to really achieving any land degradation neutrality targets. And therefore, you will see that at this level, the people are the center of the process. As FAO and WOCAT and other organizations, we try to help the communities in assessing the degradation that is happening in their localities, and then the selection of best practices or good practices to be implemented to reduce, reverse, and combat land degradation. The important thing here is the scaling out, because if we work only on localities, this is not going to make a big, let's say, impact at national level. And Cesar was talking about monitoring of land degradation at national level. So without scaling up or scaling out from farm to river basin or district and national level, without scaling out from the farmers and herder to the national authorities and institutions and ministries, this will not lead to achieving land degradation neutralities. So assessment, planning, implementation, and then scaling out. This is the in very simple way how we look at this important process. Examples of assessment of land degradation. For example, here, 3 dimensions are assessed and mapped. One is the land use systems, as Cesar mentioned and explained very nicely. The main types of degradation and the SLM practices. So we have the main basic unit. If you remember the graph that I showed, the landscape unit is mapped here as a land use system. We know the type of degradation, and then at local level now I will explain how do we assess not only the types of degradation, but the drivers, and how is that impacting the livelihood of people, and how the SLM practices that are proposed will impact the livelihood of people and the socioeconomic dimension of them, given also the socioeconomic dimension that's happening on that particular area. The objective of the assessment at local level is to improve our knowledge and understanding. So it's a baseline for monitoring, of course, but it helps the communities and the decision makers to understand what is the status and the trends of land degradation, what happened and what will happen in the future, what is the trend, and also what are the driving forces. Because if we use the DPSIR, we are looking at the driving forces, we look at the pressure, we look at the impact, and then we look at the responses. And this is very important to understand what is going on that area that increasing land degradation, both on natural terms or human or people induced land degradation. And then the other important thing is to assess the effect of land use and management practices on different land users, because here we are not talking only about agriculture and herding. We also have other land users who are using natural resources, and they will be affected by any decision that is made and by any implementation of practices that will be implemented in that area. This will also include at the local level the effectiveness of sustainable land management interventions to choose the good practices that will enhance the reduction of land degradation and in the same time enhance the livelihood of people, because selecting the best or the good practices to reduce land degradation is not always those that enhance the livelihood of people. So if we don't look at this equation together, enhancing the ecosystem, the natural resources, and in the same time enhancing the livelihood of people, their socioeconomic well-being, these practices will not be implemented. And we saw a lot of examples where projects are implementing sustainable land management and other practices, but as soon as the project is finished, everything will be gone. That's because mainly we didn't consult the communities, we didn't assess how these interventions will impact the people living on that area and also the different sectors that are using resources. So the process of assessment at local level should be participatory. As we said, we have to involve all stakeholders that are involved in using the resources and will be impacted by any changes of land use or land management in that area. It should be integrated, looking at biophysical and socioeconomic as we try to explain this, and we'll explain how we do that. Sampling strategy is important in order to make sure that we include the most important land use systems in that area, as well as the people and communities who are living there. The status, trend, and natural resources, degradation, the conservation and restoration will be mapped. I will explain how. And then analyzing the impact of land degradation and land use management changes on the livelihood and ecosystem services. And finally, the reporting and how this will feed back into the decision making process through land use plan. This is again the process. Instrumentally, how do we assist that? We start with the selection of the area from the national to local level, collecting the information about the key stakeholders who are using resources and will be impacted by any changes there. The biophysical assessment, which was also covered by Cesar very nicely. In the other side, we are looking at secondary information such as livelihood information, socioeconomic factors, how people are using resources, how people are impacted by the degradation in that area, and how they will be impacted by changing the land use and management. We have also parallel to that discussion with the community, with different sectors, with different stakeholders who are using the resources. And then we go into transects in order to represent the biophysical and socioeconomic dimension and setup in that area. Then the data entry, analysis, and then feedback to the decision maker, and finally reporting of the whole process. To go into a bit of details, what we are mapping at local level, basically the consideration is human capital. What are the gender? What are the youth composition of the population in general? What are their interests? Do they work on agriculture or tourism or whatever? Because that will impact the resources in different way. Looking at the natural capital, what do we have in terms of resources? Land, soil, water, etc., vegetation, forest. And then we look at the financial capital. What are the options for financing the sustainable land management, and what are the needs for financial means or aids in order to implement these resources. We look at the social capital also here, including all the consideration related to the social dimension, the labor, the people, what they are doing for their livelihoods. That's very important to understand. And then the physical capital also. What are the nature of that area? What are the disasters that might happen, etc. This will lead to draw the diagram, where from that we can know where are the drivers for land degradation and where are the room for enhancing the livelihood of people. If the human capital is the problem, then we have to think about more practices that involve women, involve youth, etc. If it is natural, then we have to put practices that will deal with the nature in that area, the rainfall, the temperature, etc., etc. This should be leading to some changes and adjustment in the policies and institutions. Also, that will give different livelihood strategies. What are the proposed sustainable land management options that will enhance livelihood and in the same time enhance the achievement of land degradation neutrality targets? And finally, how this livelihood outcome is influencing the whole setup. And this is what we mean by iterative process, integrated process, and participatory process. The team that will be formed to do the LADA assessment at local level should be multidisciplinary. And that's because we are touching biophysical, socioeconomic, legal issues. So there is a need for the interdisciplinary team like soil science, agronomy, water, animal production, social sciences, ecology, economics, etc. And there are a need for socioeconomic assessment, very important, because we need to understand the socioeconomic setup, and we need also to understand how do we deal with this. And we need also to involve local experts, because they know what are the challenges and what are the opportunities to enhance the management of resources. This is a kind of how do we do the assessment to include the diverse land use system and the diverse community and socioeconomic factors. From the national level, we identified the hotspots or the area that we are going to deal with and map. In these areas, we have to do some kind of transects where we go for the important land use systems and also the diverse communities that are present in that area. Through those transects, which should represent majority of that area, we collect information about using the satellite and images, information about the climate, including natural disasters, meteorology, human population, what are their composition, what they are doing, land use system and land use types, farming systems, water resources, economy and livelihood, institution and policy, very important, and the basic infrastructure and investment. You see here, we are not only looking at biophysical dimensions, we are looking also at institutions, at socioeconomic dimensions, all the resources that are available in that area in order to understand where is the problem and what are the opportunities for solutions. This is an example of transects where at each point visited, a record of what are the main land use system, what are the challenges, interview with communities, interview with people who are living there to understand what are the drivers, what is the status, what is the trend, and from that we understand what are the responses to this. In some cases, the response might be putting a road or having some aids for fertilizers. We don't know. We cannot apply one size fits all. We need to understand what is the challenge on that locality, and then what are the proposed solution in consultation with the people who are living there. This is also looking at the sustainable land management, as also I am sure you were explained what are the questionnaire for WOCAT in terms of technologies and approaches. This is important to map the sustainable land management options at that locality and then enter that into the database so everyone will be aware of these technologies and solutions and responses. Also, in our identification of the responses, we look at the WOCAT to see where are the other options that might be implemented in this area and was tested and tried in other localities or other countries maybe. So we bring those approaches and technologies to that locality. This is more details about the technology and approaches, which I am sure it was covered. Now, to wrap up, looking at the analysis and reporting, what is the summary of this? The proposed structure at the local assessment is introduction of the assessment, the methodology, and characterization of study area. And here we include biophysical as well as socioeconomic dimension, natural dimension, etc. The outcome of this would be the state of land resources and the trends. What are the driving forces and the pressures that are making this degradation happening? What is the impact on the ecosystem services? What is the impact on the people and their livelihoods? And then finally, what are the responses that we are proposing? And then we put the reporting and the recommendations for the decision makers as well as the communities to go ahead and start some implementation and management. This is an example from Morocco, where we have started with identifying the sustainable land management options. What are the responses based on the assessment of land degradation on that area, based on the transects that were taken, the discussion with the communities, sometimes in groups and sometimes bilateral. We need to meet key people in the communities in order to understand the drivers and the responses. And then the proposed options and solutions were made together with the communities, and then agreeing and through a negotiation process, where do we need to implement sustainable land management on that locality based on the assessment of resources, based on also the assessment of opportunities. This is discussed fully with the communities or representatives from the communities, and then they agree for their localities what exactly they want to do in different areas. This will go into territorial development pact because we need everyone to be committed to this. The community is committed that this is what we want to do in our area. The implementation institution, whether it is government or NGO or anybody else, they have also to commit fund and resources to implement and to help the community in implementing those options. And then this will be go into institution to confirm this pact, which is an agreement that is signed by everyone. And then this is now, for example, in the implementation process in Morocco. Without the agreement of institutions and communities on this pact, it would have been very difficult really to start this implementation and have these practices happening on the ground and on sustainable basis. So, in summary, what LADA WOCAT is helping us with is to improve our knowledge on the status and the trends of land degradation and the improvement that could be implemented. And this will include biodiversity, climate change, and other considerations. This will assist country in monitoring and reporting progress in implementing land degradation neutrality, assessing the effectiveness of interventions, prioritization of actions, and targeting investment, because this is very important to make things happen on the ground, to have the investment and to have priority areas and actions by the government and by the people to be implemented. And this will guide the decisions where to invest in which practices, and also how this will be assisting the governments in prevention, mitigation, adaptation, and restoration. So I will stop here. Thank you very much. Over to you, Lucrezia. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Feras, and I apologize with participants. We are running a few minutes late, but I think it was very interesting. I see one hands up, so my suggestion is that we take maximum 2 questions, and then we close the webinar. I'm now giving the floor to Dr. Safi. Dr. Safi, you are allowed to talk, please. You have to unmute yourself. Dr. Safi? Okay, I guess you have some issue. I don't see real questions in the question and answer box. Is there anyone that would like to ask any question to Feras or even Cesar? I guess you are getting tired. So again, I apologize for keeping it longer than expected. If there are no questions, allow me to share my screen with some maybe take-home messages that I've been writing down during the webinar. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will be sharing all the presentations and also the video recording of these 2 days session. If you need of any certificate, let's say, proving that you have been at this webinar, please let us know. We will not really send certificates themselves, but we can send you an email or a sort of letter stating that you have been with us. So take-home messages. I hope you can see my screen, and I'm kindly asking the speakers to confirm what I put on screen. From the WOCAT side, I would say that everybody can contribute to WOCAT, even the private sector, and everybody can get inspired by the approaches and technologies in WOCAT and apply them in their country and projects. An MOU can be signed with WOCAT. If you need more information of these, please contact Rima and also Nicola Rari, that unfortunately could not be with us these days. We will provide the email addresses again in the follow-up email. Also, WOCAT supports innovation and decision-making in SLM and is the primary recommended global SLM database for reporting on best SLM practices by the UNCCD. And UNCCD parties and other reporting agencies are encouraged to contribute to WOCAT and report in praise under implementation framework or action on the ground. In terms of QM, choose the right model for your country. This will improve the quality of your map. It is important to include a module for climate correction in the WOCAT-FAO. And WOCAT-FAO perform better in arid areas. The QM manual is available in 5 languages. And to the question, shall we go for remote sensing or experts knowledge? The answer is let's go for convergence of evidence. Right, Cesar? Good. Regarding LADA, LADA assists countries in monitoring and reporting in implementation of LDN, assessing the effectiveness of interventions and prioritizing actions and targeting investments. The process would be, if you're interested in implementing this methodology, to first of all do a national or subnational level assessment, then select priority landscapes, then do a landscape level assessment, proceed with an SLM territorial planning, and ultimately proceed with SLM implementation and scaling out. Critical is to select a priority landscape for thereafter implementing SLM practices. And the communities play a key role because all of this is for the community, but also implemented and led by the communities. So we need of participatory approaches. And also we need of multidisciplinary teams that also look at the socioeconomic aspects of all this work. These are the take-home messages that I wrote these days. Please feel free to add to it. I will also send you this slide just to complement what was discussed these days. If there are no comments, remarks, or questions, I will proceed with the closing the webinar. Again, I apologize that we are running a few minutes late, but we really hope that you found this webinar useful. So many thanks to Feras and Cesar for bringing us to the closure of this webinar, but also for basically leading today's session because it was very much centered on your presentations. I would also like to restate FAO's gratitude to all the speakers and moderators that supported the implementation of the webinar in these 2 days. Our gratitude, of course, also go to all participants, and we really hope that you found it interesting and that the topics we discussed helped you strengthening your skill in scaling up good land management practices in your country or project. Please do not hesitate to contact us in case of question or need. And as I said, we will share all the material with you by today or the end of this week at the latest. Once again, thank you all, and I wish you a very good rest of your day, or in your case, Cesar, a very good start of your day. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good day.
Bye. Thank you.